He came home every night, the door always opened, the keys always landed on the same table, his shoes always stopped by the wall, nothing ever looked broken, nothing ever sounded wrong. And still, something was missing. Not suddenly, not loudly, just quietly, like air leaving a room you didn't know was sealed. I remember noticing it on an ordinary night. No argument, no slammed door, no raised voices. Just the sound of the television, talking to no one. And me, sitting there, listening, waiting, for something I couldn't name. He sat beside me, close enough to touch, far enough to feel alone. His arm brushed mine, but it felt accidental, like furniture touching, not people. I looked at his face. It was calm, tired, neutral, the face of someone who had already checked out. He nodded when I spoke, answered when asked, laughed at the right moments, did everything a husband was supposed to do, except be there. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't accuse. I told myself, I was imagining things, that this is what long marriages look like. Quiet, predictable, safe. But safety can feel empty, and silence can feel loud. That night, I lay beside him, listening to his breathing, counting the seconds between inhales, wondering when we stopped breathing together. I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away, he didn't squeeze back, it just rested there, warm, heavy, absent. And in that moment, I knew he was home, but he was already gone. There's a specific kind of loneliness. It doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being with someone who isn't with you. The house stays full, but the air feels thin. Conversations stay polite, but they don't land. You stop finishing sentences, because no one notices. You stop telling stories, because no one reacts. You stop asking questions, because the answers don't matter. I remember mornings like that. Coffee brewed. 2 cups poured. One barely touched. We sat across from each other, scrolling, chewing, avoiding eye contact without deciding to. I started timing my words, choosing what was necessary, discarding what felt needy. I became smaller, quieter, easier to live with. I learned the rhythm of his disengagement, when to speak, when to stay silent, when to stop trying. It didn't feel dramatic, it felt dull, like slowly losing color. Friends asked how we were. I smiled, said we were fine, because nothing was technically wrong. No betrayal, no secrets, no reason to complain, just distance, just absence, just the feeling of talking into a room that doesn't echo back. At night, I lay awake, listening to the house settle, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, his breathing beside me, and my thoughts getting louder. I wondered if this was normal, if this was marriage aging, if wanting more was selfish. I told myself to be grateful, to stop overthinking, to stop expecting. But my body knew. My chest felt tight, my throat felt full, like words I never said were stacking inside me. I missed being seen, not admired, not praised, just noticed. I missed being chosen, in small moments, in quiet ways. And the hardest part, he didn't seem cruel. He seemed peaceful, like he had already accepted a life without me in it. The crack didn't come from something big, it came from something small, a question, thrown casually, almost by accident. Did you hear me? I asked it softly, not accusing, not angry, just curious. He blinked, looked up, said my name, asked me to repeat it, and I did, word for word, but something shifted, because I realized he hadn't even known. I was speaking, I had been talking, sharing, filling space, and he was somewhere else. Not distracted, not busy, just gone. That moment replayed later, in the shower, in the car, in the quiet minutes before sleep. I started noticing patterns, how he responded without listening, how he answered without understanding, how his eyes glazed when emotions appeared. I noticed how often I spoke into silence, how often I adjusted myself to avoid discomfort. I noticed how rarely he asked anything back, not about my day, not about my thoughts, not about me. The crack widened slowly, not enough to break, just enough to feel unstable. I wondered, when curiosity died, when interest faded, when love turned into habit. I didn't confront him. I didn't demand answers. I observed. I waited. I hoped it would pass. But hope without movement turns heavy. I found myself rehearsing conversations, practicing courage I never used, choosing peace over truth. One night, he came home late. Not unusually late, just later than expected. I asked if everything was okay. He said yes, smiled, went to shower, and I stood there, staring at the door, realizing I didn't feel relieved. I felt irrelevant. That scared me more than anger ever could. Silence grew between us, not the calm kind, the careful kind. We avoided friction, we avoided depth, we avoided each other without acknowledging it. Meals became shorter, evenings became separate. He sat with his phone, I sat with my thoughts. The space between us felt intentional, like an agreement we never discussed. I stopped reaching, not out of pride, out of exhaustion. It's tiring to offer connection to someone who doesn't take it. I watched him move through the house, comfortable, familiar, untouched by tension. While I carried weight, he never noticed. I wanted him to ask, to sense, to feel the shift, but he didn't. And that absence felt louder than shouting. We became polite roommates, sharing space, sharing history, not sharing ourselves. At night, I turned away, not to punish, to protect. I learned how to sleep without expecting warmth, how to breathe without sinking to him. I told myself this was temporary, that life was stressful, that people withdraw sometimes, but something inside me was preparing, bracing for a truth I wasn't ready to name. I started grieving, quietly, without permission, without closure. I missed the version of him who leaned in, who noticed shifts in my voice, who asked follow-up questions, who felt present. And I wondered if he missed her too. The days blurred together. Routine replaced connection, comfort replaced intimacy. I moved through motions, cooking, cleaning, smiling when expected, crying when alone. Nothing exploded, nothing resolved, it just stayed, heavy, persistent, unspoken. I stopped imagining future plans because imagining felt painful. I stopped sharing small joys because they fell flat. I stopped expressing hurt because it felt pointless. And slowly, I began pulling back too. Not out of revenge, out of survival. If he could be absent without consequence, so could I. I noticed how easy it was to disappear emotionally, how quickly habits adjust, how quickly hearts protect themselves. One evening, we sat across from each other, the television on, dinner untouched, silence thick, and I realized this could go on forever. No ending, no rupture, just two people slowly forgetting why they chose each other. That thought hurt, but it also clarified, because staying silent was also a choice, and I was tired of choosing quiet pain. The truth didn't arrive dramatically. It didn't knock, it didn't shout, it settled. Slow, heavy, unavoidable. He wasn't leaving, he wasn't cheating, he wasn't angry, he was disengaged. And that hurt more because there was nothing to fight, nothing to fix, nothing to forgive. Just absence, just disinterest, just emotional departure. I realized he had already processed this ending internally. While I was still hoping for repair, he had grieved quietly, adjusted silently, moved on emotionally without telling me, and I was living in a relationship that existed only in memory. That truth landed slowly, in layers, first denial, then sadness, then anger, then clarity. I understood. Love can fade without malice, people can leave without walking away, and staying physically present doesn't equal commitment. That realization broke me, not because it was cruel, because it was honest. I stopped asking why he changed. I stopped asking what I did wrong. I stopped blaming myself for not being enough. This wasn't about effort or attraction or mistakes. It was about presence, and he chose absence. I sat with that truth, didn't decorate it, didn't soften it, just let it exist. It hurt. Deep, quiet, permanent. But it also freed me, because knowing where someone stands is better than guessing. After the truth, there was emptiness. Not relief, not peace, just space. Where hope used to live, I moved slower, spoke less, listened more to myself. I noticed how tired I was, how much I had carried, how long I had waited. I didn't rush decisions, I didn't make declarations, I just existed. In the aftermath, in the quiet, in the knowing, he continued coming home, and I continued being awake, but something had shifted. I stopped expecting him to return emotionally, and that changed everything. The loneliness didn't disappear, but it became honest. I mourned what we were, without pretending we still were. That grief was real, necessary, heavy, but cleaner, because it was grounded in truth, not illusion. Some endings don't announce themselves. They fade, they soften, they leave quietly. This was one of them. He still comes home, the house still stands, life still moves, but something ended and I let it. Not with anger, not with blame, just acceptance. If this feels familiar, you're not alone.